The morning sun rose gently over Independence Layout, Enugu City, casting golden hues on the grand mansion of Chief Dominic Okeke. His empire stretched across industries, oil, real estate, importation. People envied his success, but inside his marble-walled mansion, Dominic felt like a prisoner. He stood by the wide window, watching cars glide by on the smooth, tarred road, his heart heavy with emptiness. At 58, Dominic was surrounded by everything except genuine love. His wife Clara was obsessed with social parties and designer clothes. His daughter Stephanie lived for social media fame, flashing her wealth online to a sea of fake admirers. Only his son David, a quiet 22-year-old with a degree in agricultural science, stayed close to him, often asking, "Dad, are you okay?" But Dominic was not okay. The laughter around him was plastic, the smiles transactional. He had grown tired of living in a house where the currency of affection was money. That night, unable to sleep, he paced his study. The walls adorned with awards felt meaningless. He needed to know who truly loved him if wealth vanished. Dominic made a call to his loyal confidant and lawyer, Barrister Chuka. "Transfer all liquid assets to my private account," Dominic ordered. "Sell the properties discreetly. I want everything to seem gone." Chuka hesitated. "Chief, do you mean to lose everything?" "No," Dominic said, his eyes hard. "I want to lose the people who are here for the wrong reasons." Days later, Dominic summoned his family to the grand living room. The chandeliers glistened above them, a symbol of fleeting grandeur. "I have bad news," Dominic began, his voice heavy. "The business is gone. The banks have taken everything. We have nothing left." Clara's mouth hung open. "What do you mean, nothing? You're joking." Dominic shook his head solemnly. "I wish I was. We must leave this house by tomorrow." Stephanie shrieked. "To where? We can't survive without this lifestyle." "To my father's house in Umwaku village, Anambra State." Silence filled the room. Then Clara's rage exploded. "You useless man! How can you bring us from billions to dust? What sort of failure are you?" Stephanie joined in, tears ruining her makeup. "My followers, my status. God forbid I go to any village. I'll die first." But in the corner, David watched his father. Quietly, he walked to Dominic and said, "Don't worry, Dad. Wherever you go, I go." A tear slipped from Dominic's eye. For that moment alone, his heart found some warmth. The next morning, the mansion stood still, stripped of servants, drivers, and guards. Dominic packed what little they could into an old battered car Chuka had arranged. The ride to Umwaku village was long, the roads winding, dust swirling in their wake. Clara grumbled incessantly, "I should have married Chief Nwakaji. This suffering is a curse." Stephanie kept her window shut, arms folded in disdain. "This is beneath me," she muttered, counting her wasted followers. David, however, enjoyed the breeze, holding his father's shoulder from the back seat. "We'll be okay, Dad." Hours later, they arrived at a crumbling compound with a mud house and a rusty roof. The smell of damp earth and firewood filled the air. Chickens roamed freely. It was a world alien to the Okekes. Clara stood still, aghast. "You can't be serious. We are to live in this graveyard." Stephanie covered her nose. "Yuck. No Wi-Fi, no mirrors, no AC." Only David helped his father unload the bags, brushing away the cobwebs on the wooden door. As night fell, they all slept on mats spread thinly over the cracked cement floor. The air was humid, the mosquitoes unforgiving. Yet amid the hardship, David whispered to his father, "I'm with you, Dad. We'll rebuild." Dominic squeezed his son's hand, the stars outside the window reminding him wealth is not riches. It is who stays when the lights go out. The first morning in Umwaku village came with the piercing crow of a rooster. Clara bolted upright on the mat, swatting mosquitoes from her face. "What kind of stupid alarm clock is this?" she shouted. Stephanie stirred, scratching the red bumps of mosquito bites on her arms. "I can't live like this. I feel sick." Dominic sat outside on a wooden stool, watching the rising sun kiss the red earth of Umwaku. The air smelled of dew, smoke, and distant cooking fires. The peace was refreshing to him, but the weight of his family's discontent still pressed on his heart. He picked up a rusted hoe and called to his family, "If we want to eat, we must farm. This land is fertile." Clara laughed mockingly. "Me, Clara Okeke farm? God forbid. I'm not digging dirt like a peasant." Stephanie scoffed. "I'd rather starve." But David stepped forward, taking the hoe from his father. "Let's go, Dad. I'll help you." Dominic smiled faintly, the pain in his eyes hidden behind pride for his son. As father and son walked to the small family plot beyond the hill, Clara sat under a mango tree, fanning herself with a palm leaf. From the corner of her eye, she noticed a group of women gathered, gossiping beneath the tree's shade. Among them stood a man dressed in shimmering native attire, gold chains swinging, a walking stick polished to a gleam. "He must be rich," Clara muttered to herself. The man's presence was commanding. He was Chief Nnamdi Eze, the self-proclaimed King of Umuaku. Clara's mind ignited with possibilities. If her husband had become poor, perhaps a new man could restore her to glory. Meanwhile, at the farm, Dominic struggled to remember how to till the earth, his hands blistering quickly. David knelt beside him, showing patience. "Dad, let me show you how the locals do it. We can grow cassava here." Dominic smiled weakly. "You make me proud, son." Back at the compound, Clara adjusted her wrapper, added a dash of hidden perfume she had saved, and approached the group under the mango tree. She smiled sweetly, walking with an exaggerated sway in her hips. "Good afternoon," she greeted, her eyes fixed on Chief Nnamdi. Chief Nnamdi looked her up and down, a slow grin spreading across his face. "Well, well, a city queen in a village. What brings you here, my dear?" "My husband lost everything," Clara replied with a staged sigh. "Brought us to suffer here." The chief chuckled. "A beauty like you should not suffer. Come, sit with me." Clara obliged, sitting under the shade, while young girls served them drinks. She laughed lightly at the chief's jokes, her mind already envisioning herself as the queen of the village, adorned in gold and lace. That evening, Dominic and David returned home, sweaty and tired. They found Clara whistling happily, a stark contrast to her earlier complaints. "Where are you coming from?" Dominic asked. "Just socializing," she replied dismissively. "I met some nice women." David frowned slightly. Her wrapper smelled more of perfume than firewood. As the night deepened, Stephanie slipped out quietly, heading towards the only small bar in the village, Royal Palm Inn. She sat in a corner, pretending to scroll through her dead phone. There, she caught the attention of Mr. Cola, a fat married man who owned a stall in the market. He approached her with a sleazy grin. "A fine city girl like you shouldn't be lonely." Stephanie smiled faintly. "City life is better than this dump." "I can make you comfortable here," Mr. Cola whispered. "If you visit me sometimes, I'll buy you gifts." Stephanie's eyes glimmered. "You'll keep your promise?" "I swear," he replied, already placing his hand on her shoulder. And so Stephanie began her secret life, trading dignity for fleeting comfort. Back at home, Dominic and David sat outside under the moonlight. The quiet crickets chirped, the air cool against their skin. "Dad," David asked gently, "do you think we'll ever go back to the city?" Dominic stared at the stars. "Maybe, but not until I find out who truly belongs by my side." David was puzzled, but said nothing. He only nodded, silently vowing to never abandon his father. Inside the house, Clara and Stephanie laid plans of their own, both chasing comfort in the arms of deceitful men, while the humble efforts of Dominic and David continued in obscurity. Little did they know, the village was watching, and soon the consequences of their choices would begin to bloom like weeds in a field unkept. The sun rose mercilessly over Umuaku village, and with it, the hidden sins of the Okeke household began to seep into public view. By now, whispers trailed behind Clara and Stephanie whenever they stepped outside, but neither of them cared. Their sights were set on their secret sources of comfort. One afternoon, Clara dressed herself in her finest wrapper, red lipstick smeared carefully, and golden earrings swinging by her ears. She walked with pride to the Royal Palm Inn, the only lodge in the village, her secret meeting place with Chief Nnamdi Eze. There the chief awaited, belly round from wine and meat, fake gold chains resting on his chest. "My queen," Chief Nnamdi cooed as Clara entered. "You look like the Legos, son." Clara giggled, sitting beside him on the creaky bed. She nursed her dreams aloud, how she would soon live in a grand house Chief Nnamdi had promised, away from her poverty-stricken husband. "I'll build you a palace," Chief Nnamdi assured her, his voice laced with false grandeur. "You'll be the most envied woman in Umuaku." Clara's eyes sparkled. She was convinced she had finally escaped the clutches of Dominic's failure. Meanwhile, Stephanie deepened her affair with Mr. Kola. He took her to bush paths and hidden corners of his farm, gifting her shiny shoes, second-hand smartphones, and cheap perfumes. "You deserve better, my city princess," Kola whispered each time, his hands never staying idle. Stephanie accepted it all, blind to the shame lurking just behind the village trees. But bad news travels faster in villages. One hot afternoon, Mrs. Kola, a stout woman with a fierce temper, stormed into the Okeke compound, screaming Stephanie's name. "Come out, you shameless daughter of Jezebel!" Stephanie emerged slowly, feigning innocence. "Who is shouting like a goat?" Mrs. Kola didn't wait for a second insult, she charged, grabbing Stephanie's shiny gown. "You think you can steal my husband? You child without shame! I'll strip the city pride out of you today." A scuffle ensued. Dust rose as villagers gathered to watch. Some cheered, some shook their heads in pity. From the side, David stood frozen, shame knotting his stomach. His family was becoming the talk of the village, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Later that day, Clara's own delusion cracked. She had been on her way to Chief Nnamdi's compound when she met Nwakego, Nnamdi's fierce first wife. The woman stood arms akimbo, eyes blazing. "City woman, so this is the snake stealing my husband?" Clara scoffed. "Jealousy is a disease, madam." Nwakego laughed bitterly. "You think Nnamdi is rich? His gold is fake. His lands are borrowed. You are chasing shadows." Clara's heart froze. She confronted the chief at the lodge, demanding answers. "Is it true?" she barked. "Is your gold fake?" Chief Nnamdi chuckled wickedly. "And so? What if it is? You left your husband for promises from a stranger. What does that make you?" His words were knives. "Cheap, that's what you are," he spat. "At least my wife stayed with me when I had nothing." Clara stood in the room, eyes burning with tears, her pride crumbling. She had sold herself for illusions. She stormed out, but the village wasn't done with her. Word spread. Clara and Stephanie became subjects of mockery at every corner. One evening, Dominic and David sat by the fading fire outside their compound. The air was heavy with the weight of disgrace. "Dad," David whispered, his voice tight. "How much more can we take?" Dominic looked into the night sky, his face stern yet weary. "We take it, son, because in life the wind must blow to reveal the fowl's backside." David didn't fully understand, but he knew his father was watching, waiting for the day his family's true colors would be clear for all to see. The weight of shame hung over Clara like a soaked cloth. Every time she stepped out, the women under the mango tree giggled knowingly. The men cast sly glances. Her fantasy of becoming the queen of Umuaku was dissolving, and fast. She marched angrily back to Royal Palm Inn, determined to confront Chief Nnamdi Eze. Her mind replayed the sting of Nwakego's words that his gold was fake, his power a show. She burst into the chief's room without knocking. The air reeked of stale beer and goat meat. Chief Nnamdi sat half-dressed, a toothpick dancing between his teeth. "What is this I hear?" Clara thundered. "Your gold is fake? Your promises lies?" The chief chuckled lazily. "So, you think I owe you truth? You left your husband to follow me, and that alone makes you a fool." His laughter was cruel, echoing like a slap. Clara stood frozen, pride melting into humiliation. "Get out," Nnamdi spat, "before my guards throw you out like the cheap ornament you are." Clara stormed out, heart pounding, ears burning with the whispers of villagers who watched her disgrace unfold. She hurried back home, but even the compound offered no refuge. That evening, as the orange sky faded, Dominic sat outside fixing a broken chair. He watched as Clara returned, her wrapper dusty, her face downcast. For the first time, she had no insults, no pride. Dominic spoke quietly. "I am ashamed of you, Clara." She looked up sharply. "What did you say?" "I said I am ashamed," Dominic repeated. "The whole village knows your name, not for honor, but for disgrace." Clara's voice trembled. "You made me like this. You dragged me from a mansion to this dust." Dominic shook his head, his voice like stone. "No, you did this to yourself." Inside, David overheard everything, his heart aching for his father, for the family that was slipping through shame. Meanwhile, Stephanie's own world was crumbling. After the public brawl with Mrs. Cola, she became a symbol of disgrace among the youth. Her once polished skin was now rough from sun exposure. Her once flaunted clothes now faded. She no longer posted pictures, she was the village joke, the city girl who fell from grace. In private, she whispered to Clara, "Mommy, we have to leave. This place is killing me." Clara snapped, "To where? Back to that useless husband?" But deep inside, Clara was haunted by the chief's rejection. His insults echoed whenever she tried to sleep. One morning, while applying red lipstick with trembling hands, Clara stared at herself in a cracked mirror. "What have I become?" she whispered. She remembered the woman who once wore diamonds, who once commanded respect in Enugu, now reduced to fighting in dusty roads, seduced by fake chiefs. She thought of Dominic, his quiet dignity even in poverty, his patience, his hands blistered from farming. Guilt began to gnaw at her, but pride kept her from admitting it. That same day, David approached her, his face stern but respectful. "Mother," he said, "what do you gain from all this? Is this the life you wanted?" Clara shot him a deadly look, but David didn't flinch. "You've thrown away dignity for small change, for promises from men who mock you behind your back. Is that better than standing with your husband?" Clara's lip quivered, but she said nothing. Pride was still louder than truth. That night, while the village slept, Clara sat outside, staring at the moon. Alone, defeated, lost. She remembered the last words the chief spat at her. "At least my wife stayed when I had nothing. You? You're just for show." The weight of it crushed her spirit, but still she stayed silent. She was not yet ready to admit she had lost everything, even herself. But the time for reckoning was drawing near, and Umuaku was watching. The air in Umuaku village was dry and heavy, as if the earth itself carried the weight of the Okeke family's disgrace. Yet in the midst of the crumbling reputation, Dominic Okeke remained calm, watching, observing, learning. One morning, he woke up before the first crow of the rooster. He packed the little belongings he shared with David, his loyal son. His mind was made up. As he stepped out, the air still cool with dawn, he saw Clara sitting on a stone, arms folded, her face hard. "Where are you going with that bag?" she asked sharply. Dominic stood tall. "I've secured work in the city." Clara laughed bitterly. "Doing what? Security guard? Gatekeeper? That's all you're worth now." Dominic smiled faintly. "A beginning is a beginning." David stepped out, carrying his own small bag. He looked between his parents, his face devoid of anger, but full of sadness. "I'm going with Dad," David said quietly. "I've stood with him this far. I won't stop now." Clara rolled her eyes. "Go. Good riddance to bad rubbish." From behind her, Stephanie giggled, seated lazily on a wooden stool, her eyes deadened by boredom and despair. Finally, some peace and quiet. Dominic gazed at Clara, his voice low but firm. "We offered you a way forward. You chose your path." Clara sneered. "Go and suffer. This village is better than following a failure to the city." Without another word, Dominic and David walked to the village motor park, a rickety collection of rusting buses and motorcycles. No one followed them. No one waved goodbye. As the bus rolled away, Dominic watched the village disappear behind the dust, his heart heavy not from poverty, but from the family he had lost. Hours later, the bus arrived in Enugu city. The contrast was striking: tall buildings, blaring horns, busy markets. The city was alive, indifferent to their months of obscurity. Hey, David turned to his father. "Where are we going now, Dad? The security job?" Dominic chuckled softly, his eyes twinkling. "Not exactly." They walked down clean paved streets until they stopped in front of a massive mansion in Independence layout, grander than the one they had lost, its gates tall and gleaming, the garden lush and trimmed. David's mouth hung open. "Whose house is this?" Dominic pulled out a remote from his pocket and pressed a button. The gates slid open smoothly. "Ours," he said quietly. "Welcome home, son." David spun to face him. "But how?" Dominic smiled gently. "We were never truly poor. It was all a test of heart, of loyalty. And only you passed." David's knees weakened. "So, the suffering, the village, a plan," Dominic confirmed. "I needed to know who was with me when the riches were gone. You stayed, David. And this," he gestured to the mansion, "is your reward." Inside, the mansion was a masterpiece: marble floors, chandelier lights, imported furniture, a world far from the cracked mud walls of Umuaku. "I'll teach you how to manage this empire," Dominic said. "The real wealth is not the money, it's the integrity to hold it, and the heart to share it." David swallowed hard, pride and tears swelling in his chest. "Thank you, Dad. I'll never forget." Back in Umuaku, the air was stale with heat. Clara and Stephanie sat outside the crumbling compound, their laughter hollow. Then Sunday Ikenna, the village gossip, arrived, breathless from his journey to the city. "You people won't believe what I saw in Enugu," Sunday announced, waving a newspaper. "Chief Dominic is living in a mansion finer than State House. He's richer than before." Clara's smile froze. "You're lying." Sunday laughed. "Lie? I saw it with my 2 eyes. Cars lined up, fountain dancing water. He and that son of his kings." Stephanie's jaw dropped. "That can't be." But it was. The truth crashed on them like a wave. They had mocked the man who never lost, only tested them. Clara sat back, her heart heavy, eyes glazed. Stephanie covered her face, shame burning her skin. They were alone in disgrace, in poverty, in the village they once spat on. Meanwhile, in Enugu, Dominic and David sat in their mansion garden, watching the fountain. Father and son, together not just in wealth, but in truth. Dominic placed a hand on David's shoulder. "Now we build, son, the right way." And for the first time in years, Dominic Okeke felt wealthy, not because of his riches, but because he was not alone. The walls of the Independence layout mansion glistened under the Enugu sun, a symbol of wealth restored, yet this time, rooted in something far deeper than fortune. Dominic Okeke stood on the balcony, watching the city breathe and move. Inside his heart, peace settled like dew after a long night storm. In the vast living room, David Okeke sat, still dazed by the grandeur of their new home, the soft leather seats, the tall golden drapes, the chandelier that hung like a crown from the ceiling. All of it was real. Yet his thoughts circled one question. Why the test, Father? Why the pain? Dominic sat across from him, sipping fresh palm wine, the kind only the village taught him to enjoy slowly. "Son," Dominic began, "do you now understand wealth?" David looked around, puzzled. "Is it this house? The cars?" Dominic smiled. "No, wealth is not just money, David. It is knowing who will stand with you when the lights go out, when the world strips you bare." David's eyes moistened. "I stood because you are my father. I couldn't let you suffer." "And that," Dominic said, his voice heavy with pride, "is why you are the only one fit to inherit everything I have." Dominic walked him through the private study, opening drawers, revealing documents, bank account statements, properties in Lagos, Abuja, London. all still under his control. I never lost anything, Dominic admitted. I simply wanted to lose the ones who never truly loved me. David stood silently, the weight of the truth filling his chest. But Mother, Stephanie, do they know? Dominic shook his head. They made their choice. They laughed when I left. They shamed us. And now they must live with that. David swallowed hard, a mix of sadness and justice brewing inside him. What happens now, Dad? Dominic smiled faintly. Now, we build. You'll take part in my businesses. But you'll also lead a new venture, a foundation that educates and empowers youth in agriculture. Our wealth must feed others, not just us. David's heart leapt. I'll do it, Dad. I'll make you proud. At that moment, Dominic felt something no amount of money had ever given him a legacy. Meanwhile, back in Enugu village, Clara and Stephanie sat outside their fading compound, peeling cassava silently. Sunday Ikenna, the village gossip, had already spread the news. Chief Dominic was not only rich, but richer than before, living large in Enugu with David by his side. The villagers mocked quietly as they passed. City woman way full hand, they murmured. Fine daughter way turned village rat, others snickered. Clara stared into the dirt, her eyes hollow. Stephanie stared at her cracked nails, her mind replaying the days of Instagram glitz, now replaced with flies and dust. Mama, Stephanie whispered, do you think he'll ever come back for us? Clara shook her head slowly, her voice a broken shadow. We lost him. We lost everything. Stephanie's throat tightened. We laughed. We mocked him. We chose ourselves, Clara said bitterly, and ourselves have failed us. Back in Enugu, Dominic and David stood before the large gates of their mansion. A new plaque was being installed, near Sawane, the house that loyalty built. Dominic placed a hand on David's shoulder. I may have tested my family and lost them, but I found you, and that is a fortune the world cannot measure. David smiled. Thank you, Dad, for believing in me. Father and son walked back inside, the sun setting gracefully over Enugu skyline, a reminder that endings bring beginnings, and true wealth is the heart that stays when all else fades. The village of Umuaku buzzed with gossip one humid afternoon when Sunday Ikenna, the notorious village mouthpiece, returned from another of his city escapades. He strode proudly into the village square, a folded city newspaper clutched in his hand, his voice loud and eager. Una day here they peel cassava, Sunday shouted, but Dominic Okeke done buy new mansion in Enugu. He get one fountain way they pour water like government house, and a David day follow, am day waka like king. Villagers gathered quickly, their ears stretching to hear the latest. Inside the crumbling Okeke compound, Clara and Stephanie heard the commotion. Clara looked up from her mat where she lay fanning herself, her heart sinking as Sunday's words floated into her ears. Sunday's voice grew clearer as he neared their compound. I even see him with my Koro eyes. Chief Dominic no just rich. He done double the money, Seth. Dem saying a new businesses day everywhere. Stephanie's hands froze mid-braid. She stared blankly ahead, her mind replaying the mockery she and her mother had thrown at Dominic and David the day they left. Clara's face drained of color. She stood abruptly, staggering slightly, as if Sunday's words had slapped her physically. Nah, it's a lie, she whispered, voice quivering. It's a lie. But deep inside, she knew it wasn't. Dominic had outwitted them all. The test had been real, the shame now permanent. That evening, Clara sat on a wooden stool outside, watching the sun lower itself behind the trees, her mind heavy with regret. The image of Dominic and David living in wealth without her haunted her thoughts. Maybe if we apologized, Stephanie whispered, breaking the silence. Clara chuckled bitterly, her voice hollow. To who? The man we called a pauper? The son we mocked? We crossed a bridge we can't return from. Stephanie lowered her gaze, tears threatening to fall. Her skin, once pampered with imported creams, now bore the scars of sun, dust, and shame. We were blind, Stephanie said weakly, blinded by greed. Clara shook her head. No, child. We weren't blind. We chose to close our eyes. Meanwhile, in Enugu, within the glowing lights of the mansion, Dominic and David sat on the balcony, looking over the city skyline. The air was fresh, the horizon clear. Dominic turned to his son. Ikenna would have spread the news by now. David smiled faintly. They'll regret, but does it matter anymore? Dominic sighed, his voice low. Regret is a mirror that reflects too late. They have their reflection now. David stared out into the distance. Will you ever forgive them? Dominic was quiet for a moment. Then he answered, Forgiveness is a gift for the giver, not the receiver. But trust, David. Trust once broken is like shattered glass. It cuts when you try to piece it back together. David nodded slowly. We'll build forward then. For those who stayed, Dominic smiled. Yes, for those who stayed. As the night wrapped itself around Enugu City, the Okeke mansion stood tall, a monument of patience, of loyalty rewarded, and of betrayal exposed. Back in Umuaku, the crickets sang over the crumbling Okeke compound. Clara sat still, her eyes open but staring into emptiness. Stephanie lay on the mat beside her, wiping silent tears. Their laughter, pride, and arrogance were gone, replaced with the one thing the wealthy fear most, irrelevance. And so the lesson stood tall. In the end, loyalty cannot be bought, and when wealth disappears, so too do those who never truly cared.